Welcome to our webinar. The topic for today's webinar is using community solar to cut energy burdens in manufactured mobile home communities. This webinar is being presented by the Clean Energy States Alliance. We have an excellent panel of guest speakers with us today, but before we pass it over to them, I'd like to go over some webinar logistics. We're using a new version of GoToWebinar, so if you have any feedback for us about our new platform, feel free to share it with us in the post-webinar survey or our email. All attendees are in listen-only mode, so your camera and microphone off. You can submit questions and comments via the questions panel. We will be saving 15 minutes post-webinar for questions to be answered, but please submit your questions while while the webinar is going on. Don't wait till the end. And this webinar is being recorded. The webinar slides and recording will be available to you after the webinar. It will be emailed to all attendees. You can also find these materials on our website at cisa.org/webinars. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to our host for today's webinar.
Hey, thanks, Zareen, and thanks everybody for joining today. My name is Matt Olaf, and I'm a project manager at the Clean Energy States Alliance, or CISA. CISA is a national nonprofit made up of public agencies and organizations working together to advance clean energy. CISA works with leaders, federal agencies, industry representatives, and other stakeholders to develop clean energy programs and inclusive renewable energy markets. CISA members, who are mostly state energy agencies, include many of the most innovative, successful, and influential public funders of clean energy initiatives across the country. You can see our members' logos on your screen right now. The title of today's webinar, as Zareen mentioned, is Using Community Solar to Cut Energy Burdens in Manufactured Mobile Homes Communities, which will highlight this report that you see on your screen that was released earlier this year, titled A Program Design Combining Community Solar and Weatherization for Manufactured Homes in Michigan. And while this report is specific to Michigan, this model that's presented could be pursued by other states and communities across the country. So this report is the result of a request for technical assistance by the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy to the U.S. Department of Energy's National Community Solar Partnership, or NCSP. The slide on your screen provides an overview of the activities and goals of NCSP. And it was announced last week that NCSP, which for the past several years has solely focused on supporting equitable community solar development, has been renamed to NCSP Plus, National Community Solar Partnership Plus, and expanded to also include supporting equitable residential and distributed rooftop solar and storage and commercial solar projects. So NCSP Plus is open to any individual organization with an interest in supporting equitable solar development in the US. And you can see at the bottom of that slide an example of the different entities that are NCSP members. NCSP Plus also provides technical assistance to its members, which is how this report that the focus of this webinar today came to be, that Michigan EGLE had a technical assistance request to NCSP to dig into this concept of providing community solar to manufactured homes residents in Michigan in the most effective way. So our two panelists for today's webinar are Ben Paulus and Jeannie Oliver. Ben is the Energy Markets and Policy Department, is with the Energy Markets and Policy Department at the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory and the author of this report being discussed today. Jeannie Oliver is the Vice President of Resident-Owned Communities New Hampshire and Energy Solutions at the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund. Some of her work is profiled in the report being discussed today, which is what she will be presenting on. The full bios of both of the panelists will be in the chat if you'd like to learn more about them. Before I hand it over to Ben, I'd like to mention that there will be time for Q&A after the presentations. So there is a questions box in your portal. So please feel free to submit any questions while they're presenting, and we'll field those questions after the presentations. So without further ado, I will pass it off to Ben.
Yeah, so I'm Ben Paulus. I'm with Berkeley Lab out here in Berkeley, California. And as Matt said, we got a request from the Michigan Energy Office to help design a program that would expand community solar to serve manufactured homes in Michigan. Excuse me. Matt talked quite a bit about the NCSP Plus. You can get more information here at energy.gov/community solar. NCSP has many moving targets, including technical assistance, which Berkeley Lab and NREL, the National Renewable Energy Lab, provide. There's also a states collaborative for state energy offices. The Community Power Accelerator is also a bundle of activities, including a marketplace for projects to find financing and for financiers to find projects to fund. There's also a learning lab offered by the University of New Hampshire, which is an online course to learn how to be a community solar developer. The Clean Energy Connector is a new software tool that makes it easy for weatherization or LIHEAP management programs to sign up their clients for community solar offerings. So there's a lot of moving parts, and I recommend you sign up for it if you're not already participating. So the report in this case for Michigan, EGLE has, was interested specifically in manufactured homes, or sometimes known as mobile homes, though they're not always that mobile. They're a form of naturally occurring affordable housing. There are almost 250,000 in Michigan, which is not the largest number among states. The number one states I think are New Mexico and South Carolina, I believe, have more manufactured homes, but Michigan has plenty. And incomes of people who live in manufactured housing in Michigan are just about 1/3 of those of people who live in single-family detached homes, conventional stick homes. So it is a very, if you're trying to reach low-income households with high energy burdens, manufactured housing is a good place to start. Michigan had previously done 3 pilot projects under the Celica initiative, which is another DOE initiative. They did projects with one with an investor-owned utility, one with a municipal utility, and one with a rural electric co-op, Cherryland Electric Co-op. In total, they served 125 households. The homes were previously weatherized. They're all income qualified. The subscriptions helped them save money on their bills. These were not necessarily manufactured housing. They were just conventional housing, apartments, etc. The results were that there was a drop in late payments. There was less stress and more comfort on the part of the residents of the homes. The homes were also weatherized, insulation, windows, etc. They did surveys where they got to know a better understanding of what participants wanted and what they got from the program. They had to create an income verification method through these pilots. There was an analysis after the fact by the University of Michigan, and the outcome was a replicable model and a guidebook that other communities could draw upon. And specifically, they wanted to follow up with working on manufactured housing. So we came up with a program that combines 3 elements, all of which are essentially stolen from other places. The community solar, of course, would provide the electricity for the program. To make the most of the electricity, we would go after what the largest energy burden was in Michigan manufactured homes, which is heating bills, winter heating bills. So we focused on installing an air source heat pump to be a heater, as well as, of course, an air conditioner, to attack those winter heating bills. And to deal with the seasonal mismatch of solar production and cold weather heating bills, we stole from a different program that manages bill credits to deliver them during the winter heating season. So I'm going to walk through each of those 3 steps. The pilot programs I mentioned, Michigan has an environmental justice focus in their policy. They have a My Solar Access program to promote community solar. And actually, by the way, the pilots are documented in a CISA case study, the Solar with Justice case study from June 2023, shown on the screen. That's available on the CISA website, cisa.org. Michigan also wanted to, in addition to pursuing their own environmental justice goals, they wanted to work in alignment with the DOE National Community Solar Partnership goals, what DOE calls the 5 meaningful benefits, including delivering savings to low-income households and benefits to disadvantaged communities. And they wanted to work in alignment with the EPA Solar for All program. Michigan is an awardee of the Solar for All grant program. Those should be rolling out, I think, by the end of the year or early next year. So there were many arrows pointing in the same direction for community solar there. The second element was to make the most of the electricity from the solar project. We would focus on electrifying these manufactured homes, specifically the heating source. The air source mini split heat pump is a common technology and relatively easy to install. And that's actually a key issue for manufactured housing. This idea was taken from research done by the Florida Solar Energy Center under their program called PV GEMS, GEMS, where they were working on designs to electrify manufactured housing, including water heaters, batteries, and rooftop solar. So we're taking only parts of that element, but you could certainly apply all. We focus on mini split heat pumps because weatherization of manufactured homes can be tricky depending on the home. Especially older ones can have very thin walls, 2x2 walls with very little insulation, and you can't really add insulation to them because there's no space in the cavity. They may have ductwork issues in the ceiling or the crawl space. They may have roof structures that don't let you put solar panels on the roof. So they can be difficult to weatherize. And mini split heat pump is actually a workaround. If you want to spend some time on YouTube, you can find plenty of examples of DIY mobile home owners installing mini split heat pumps. You essentially drill a hole in your wall, you put the inside unit on the inside wall and the outside unit outside, and you're done. It's fairly straightforward, and it avoids all of the complicated weatherization things you might run into. So this can be a high efficiency replacement, especially for homes with electric resistance heating, which can be very expensive, baseboard heating. Homes with propane or heating oil, those are also high cost heating sources. It's not very effective in replacing natural gas. If you have a mobile home community served with natural gas, you're not likely to save money switching to a mini split and to electricity. An additional benefit is that a new mini split can provide high efficiency air conditioning. If the home has air conditioning, this is a more efficient replacement. If it doesn't have air conditioning, this is a way to add it. One open question, which I think was beyond my knowledge, Michigan winters can get very cold, and a standard mini split air source heat pump, there are definitely designs for cold weather applications. Those heat pump designs tend to cost more, which can affect the cost effectiveness of this program. Will a conventional one keep up, or do you need a cold climate one? I'm not sure. Or do you simply keep the old heating system as a backup for those, sub-zero days? This is something to be tested by the pilot project, assuming they pursue it. The third element I took from a project in Minnesota, which CISA has also documented with a case study. The Community Action Agency in near Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, called Mahube Atwa. They did a small pilot project with a community solar installation where they delivered the bill credits during winter heating season. They essentially put them in a bank because they're generated more in the summer than in the winter. They put the credits in a bank and delivered them when those big winter heating bills arrived in the mailbox of these homes. Winter heating bills are a big problem for driving arrearages, non-payments, and utility service shutoffs. So attacking those big winter heating bills can be a way to avoid that catastrophe, bringing them down from $300 to $150 or whatever the numbers are. So this, I thought this was a very clever idea. A solar bill credit is, it's kind of an abstract commodity once it's created. Solar electricity generation happens when it happens in the summer, especially. A bill credit can be saved up for later. So it's an additional flexibility of community solar, and this Minnesota project put that flexibility to good use. Another part of the research for Michigan was a methodology to identify where to focus. With 250,000 manufactured homes, they're obviously not going to be treating all of them. So we came up with a methodology that prioritized homes with resistance heating, electric resistance, propane and heating oil, high cost fuels. Homes that had high energy burdens or arrearages or other factors. Homes that were in disadvantaged communities or bonus areas for the federal tax credit. The disadvantaged communities can be identified. Michigan has its own environmental justice mapping system, but there's also a federal one called CEJST, the Climate and Energy Justice, Climate and Environmental Justice Screening Tool, I think is the name. So that can help identify disadvantaged communities if you don't have a state map tool already. The ITC is the Federal Investment Tax Credit. Thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, the ITC has bonuses. It's a 30% baseline with 10, 20% bonuses, depending on a number of factors. If you're in an energy community, if you are using American-made equipment, if you are serving low-income households. So you can, if you can identify those areas and focus on them, you can boost the tax credit to 40, 50% or more, which can really help drive down the cost and deliver more benefits to the households. As Matt pointed out, Michigan is a northern state, it's a cold state. There are going to be different issues for warm states where there are lots of manufactured housing. In a hot climate, you're going to have less heating load, of course, but you can have more cooling load. A conventional air source heat pump will probably be fine for winter heating and maybe give you a big boost in summertime efficiency for air conditioning. So I think there are different, there are going to be different numbers in warm climate states, but I think some of the same benefits. There's also, frankly, in warm states, you don't need to worry about the seasonal mismatch because the big bills are in the summertime more than the winter. The report went on to identify a number of leveraging options to find other sources of funding to further drive down the costs. In addition to the ITC bonuses, the ITC can now be taken out as direct pay, direct payment instead of a tax credit for non-taxable organizations like nonprofits or local governments. The EPA Solar for All program I mentioned is rolling out. There are a number of new state green banks created with federal funding from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. And the USDA Rural Energy for America program also got supersized thanks to IRA. And some of these programs can cover both community solar and weatherization or electrification of manufactured homes. On the heat pump side, there are federal tax credits for households if they're eligible. There are the federal rebate program, home energy rebate program. Those are rolling out now I think we're up to maybe 4 states that have those active, and a number of others are in the works and expected in the coming months. Then there are sort of, you could call them non-energy funds. Most states have a state housing and community development fund that can be applied, as Michigan does. The weatherization program has a couple of bonus award programs, Sustainable Energy for Consumers, for example, the CERC awards. And HUD has funding available for improvements in manufactured home communities, including the PRICE program. So ideally, and then there are, of course, non-government sources like foundations, corporate grants, et cetera. So the idea is to stack up as many funding sources as possible so that the maximum amount of benefits can be delivered to low-income communities. So that's the quick summary of the report. It's on our website at emp.lbl.gov. And my contact information is here if you have any further questions. So I'm going to turn it back over to Matt, and you can take it away. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ben. And I'll just go ahead and pass it over to Jeannie.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to apologize in advance for any background noise that you might hear during my presentation. I'm in a public space, and I'll try and mute myself if it gets too loud. But I want to thank Ben for inviting me to be a co-panelist today, and CISA for giving us this platform. But most of all, I want to thank all of you who are attending today for your interest in this topic. I understand there's over 300 people signed up for this webinar, which I think is an amazing sign of what's to come in this space. So I am Jeannie Oliver. I'm the Vice President of ROC New Hampshire and Energy Solutions at the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund. And today I'm going to be talking about our projects, our community solar projects in resident-owned manufactured housing parks in New Hampshire, the projects that we've had success with to date, and our vision for the future. So to start us off, I'm just going to very quickly give you an overview of what the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund is for any of the audience who might not be familiar with us. So the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund is a community development financial institution, or a CDFI. We love our acronyms here at CDFIs. We're a nonprofit lender with over 40 years experience of doing mission-based lending and technical assistance to individuals and organizations. And the goal is to create opportunities to fully participate in the economy. We got our start in 1983 with an investment from the New Hampshire Sisters of Mercy, which was put to good use to help residents at a manufactured housing park in Meredith purchase their park. So that park was going to be closed, and these 13 households were going to lose their homes. We provided the capital using that investment and technical assistance to help those households organize as a consumer cooperative. And they are our oldest resident-owned community, and it gave rise to the resident-owned community movement. So what is a resident-owned community? There are many manufactured housing parks across the country. In most of those parks, you'll have residents who either own their own home or rent their home in the park, but don't own the land underneath their home. With a resident-owned community, the households get together, they form a cooperative, and with capital provided by people like New Hampshire Community Loan Fund and other nonprofit lenders, they purchase the park. And that's really important because it provides them with housing security. Their parks are not going to get closed by an investor who might think that there's a better use for the land. And it also helps them to stabilize their rents. Since 1983, ROC New Hampshire has grown to be, well, the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund's biggest program, but we've gone from that very first resident-owned community to having 151 resident-owned communities just in New Hampshire, and that's about 11,000 affordable homes that have been preserved. But this ROC movement is also a national movement. We have ROC USA, which is helping communities to access capital and technical assistance to form resident-owned communities all across the country. A big part of what we do at ROC New Hampshire is technical assistance. So the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund provides the capital, but technical assistance is a really, really important part of successful resident-owned communities, resident-owned manufactured housing parks. And our technical assistance starts at the very beginning with helping the communities to form their cooperative, but it continues throughout the life of those communities. So we do ongoing trainings and business and governance coaching. And one really special area of technical assistance that we've been involved with is what I call ROC projects. And that includes like help with infill, so helping communities get new homes into their park, help with really critical infrastructure projects like water quality, drinking water, wastewater projects, which oftentimes when our communities are acquiring their parks, they're acquiring poor infrastructure. And so we help to connect communities with funding opportunities to do those very important infrastructure projects. And then relevant to today's topic, since about 2018, we've been helping our communities to connect with funding opportunities for sustainable energy projects. So we have a pretty well-established ROC community solar program now as part of our technical assistance program. So as Ben has talked about, community solar is essentially a shared solar project with multiple households sharing in one solar array. And that's how our ROC community solar projects work. We'll site a project either in the community or off-site and have multiple ROC households getting the benefits of that one solar array. In New Hampshire, these projects are enabled through the state's group net metering program, and they're also supported by New Hampshire's low moderate income community solar programs as well, which includes an LMI adder to the net metering rate. We've also been very fortunate that New Hampshire has the Renewable Energy Fund for low moderate income community solar projects, which provides grant funding to help overcome some of the financial barriers to community solar projects. And then something I want to really spell out about doing successful low-income community solar projects and community solar projects in manufactured housing parks is the importance of having the community support, the importance of technical assistance, and also collaborations. So the technical assistance that we provide our ROC communities for these projects, it doesn't just come from ROC New Hampshire, it comes from a number of different organizations. And those partnerships and relationships have been really key in the success of these projects. So the projects we've done to date, as I said, we started working on these in 2018 with the Mascoma Meadows project, which is featured in Ben's report. We have 3 completed projects that are serving ROC households now, and that represents about 100 low moderate income households. And we have 4 more projects that are in various stages of development. They've been fully funded, all through the State of New Hampshire's Renewable Energy Fund, and they will serve approximately another 100 low moderate income households. What's really, really exciting for us is that we, at the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund, we're part of the State of New Hampshire's Solar for All application in collaboration with the New Hampshire Department of Energy and New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority. And New Hampshire Community Loan Fund has been allocated about $11 million, just over $11 million, which is set aside to do ROC community solar projects. So we're anticipating that over the next 5 years, we'll be doing an additional 10 to 20 ROC community solar projects, which probably sounds pretty ambitious given that, as you can see from the slide, since 2018, we've completed 3 with 4 in progress, but those 7 projects have really provided us with an opportunity to learn lessons and streamline these projects so that we have more of a standardized model, which is going to make this scaling up possible. And then that last statistic I have there is just based on the projects that we have completed. The average monthly saving that's been realized in our communities is between $28 and $55 a month. from these rock community solar projects. So our projects have utilized both standard models of community solar. So we have projects that are both community owned and investor owned. There are pros and cons to both of these. A community owned project, what does that look like? That's where the resident owned community, so the cooperative itself, owns and operates the project. The key benefit of this model, of course, is that all of the financial and environmental benefits are staying in the community. The downside for ROCs is that ROCs are a domestic not-for-profit entity, but they're not recognized as a federal nonprofit. And therefore, this particular model does leave the investment tax credit on the table. The investor-owned or power purchase agreement model, I think most people are probably familiar with this who are on this webinar, but that is where an investor owns the solar array and there'll be a power purchase agreement between the resident-owned community, so the cooperative, and the investor. The benefit of this model is that the investment tax credit can be leveraged. However, what we've found from experience is that scale matters with a PPA, and for some of our smaller projects, we don't get a lot of interest from investors wanting to do a PPA model. So this is just a visual representation of how the rock community solar model works in practice. I know some people are visual, so I like to provide an opportunity for those folks to see how it works. So whether it's a PPA or a community-owned project, because it's participating in the state's group net metering program, the solar electricity is getting put back into the distribution grid. The distribution utility is then providing, in most cases with our projects, on-bill credits to each of the households that have opted in to the project. And then just in terms of the legal agreements that are happening in these projects, there's in New Hampshire what we call a group net metering agreement between the cooperative ROC and each of the households that just sets out the sort of rights and responsibilities of the households and the cooperative as it relates to the project and the administration of the project. And then, of course, you have your contract with the solar installer or the investor. That might be an engineering, procurement, and construction agreement for a turnkey project or a power purchase agreement. So I just have a slide for each of the projects that we have completed so far. So the first is Mascoma Meadows, the project that really kicked off rock community solar projects. And I know there's been a lot about this project already reported and out there in the public space, but I thought I'd just give a quick overview. So this is a 100 kilowatt AC project. You can see a picture of it there on the right. There are 45 participating households. This project was the first project to be funded by the New Hampshire Renewable Energy Fund, and it had partial grant funding. And then Revision actually stepped in with a PPA for this project. What's pretty cool about this project, and really fits in with the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund's motto of neighbours helping neighbours, is that the land for the solar array was donated by the church next door. So the community had voted to go ahead with the project and to purchase the land from the church. And after the church learnt that the community was enthusiastic and behind the project, they donated the land. This project is a little error in this slide. This project's actually producing about 65% of the household's electricity use. And this project is a little different to the rest of our projects in that it's not getting on-bill credits because it predates the on-bill credit rules in New Hampshire. So the way we structured this is that the net metering credits are being distributed to the households as a $20 a month lot rent reduction with an annual true-up. And when we've done that annual true-up, it's actually worked out to about $28 a month in savings for each of the participating households. So the second project that we completed was White Rock in Tilton, New Hampshire. This is a 66 kilowatt AC project with 25 participating households. This project was actually fully grant funded. It was the first project to be fully grant funded by the New Hampshire Renewable Energy Fund. And the terms of being fully grant funded are that you have to distribute at least 75% of the benefits of the project to low, moderate income residents, and this project is meeting that requirement. This project is owned by the cooperative, and it's producing about 73% of the household's electricity use in this park. This one is a little bit complicated in terms of administration because when we applied for the grant funding, we were using the Mascoma Meadows model of a lot rent reduction. But after it was already approved, a new law came into effect that allowed for on-bill credits. And if you opt into the on-bill credits, you also can take advantage of the low moderate income adder to the net metering rate. And so this one is being split between on-bill credits and a lot rent reduction. 75% of the benefits are being distributed as lot rent reductions, and 25% are going to households as an on-bill credit. The average on-bill credit is about $206 per year, with the rest being offsetting lot rent increases or being a lot rent reduction. Our most recently completed project is at the Pine Hill community in North Conway, and this really is the project that is demonstrating standardization and sort of simplification of the model, and is, we hope, going to make bringing these projects to scale possible. So this is a relatively small project that was sized to fit into a vacant lot. You can see that in the photo out to the right. The vacant lot on the right-hand side is where the solar array is now located. There are 15 households currently signed up out of a potential 25. This one was also fully grant funded by the New Hampshire Renewable Energy Fund, and it is owned by the cooperative. And it will produce about 80% of the household's electricity use in this community. When it is fully subscribed, so when all 25 households do sign up, we are expecting that each household is going to save about $380 per year, or $31 a month. So this next slide just shows the 4 projects that are in progress. And sorry about the loudspeaker again. We have a project in Stratham, in Plymouth, and Bethlehem, so a very diverse geography here. They range between 62 kilowatts, so pretty small, up to 100 kilowatts AC. And those 3 projects are all funded by the Renewable Energy Fund. The one I really want to focus in on today, though, is the project that is proposed at Northwoods in Berlin, New Hampshire. This one is not funded by the New Hampshire Renewable Energy Fund, and for me, it's the most exciting, and it really fits in with the study that Ben did and presented on today. So this project is funded by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, Weatherization, Weatherization Assistance Program, Enhancement and Innovation Grant. It's quite the mouthful to remember that acronym. It will be a combination of community solar, weatherization, and electrification. So we'll be installing a 100 kilowatt AC community solar array that will be owned by the cooperative. And then, as I said, combining it with weatherization and electrification. So this project at Northwoods, it's going to involve doing weatherization audits and retrofits, working with the local CAP agency. And that part of the project is going to be funded by the Weatherization Assistance Program, and also, will be funded by the Weatherization Assistance Program. The next step will be to install heat pumps, and that will be funded by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, Weatherization Assistance Program, Enhancement and Innovation Grant. And then the third phase will be to install the community solar array, which is also funded by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, Weatherization Assistance Program, Enhancement and Innovation Grant. We think that this project is going to serve as a really excellent illustration of all of the things that Ben talked about today, of bringing together like a total energy retrofit. And by collecting data and stories on this project, we're hoping that we will be able to provide a really tangible case study of the benefits of this type of full energy retrofit. And so just to wrap up my section of this panel today with some concluding thoughts. So the resident-owned community model, where you have a cooperative structure with democratic decision-making, we've found that that has made it possible to overcome many of the barriers to low-income solar that I know CISA has put a number of reports out on and is working really well for us. Community solar projects and other sustainable energy and infrastructure projects are really important to manufactured housing communities and affordable housing communities generally. They help to stabilize affordable housing, and they really can improve the quality of life in those communities. State and federal funding programs are really helping us now in an unprecedented way to scale up low, moderate income renewable energy, energy efficiency, and weatherization efforts, along with other critical infrastructure projects. And then something I can't overemphasize at all is technical assistance, collaborations, relationships, partnerships. This is often an overlooked component of doing a community solar project or other comprehensive energy retrofit project. And it's so, so important. The success of these projects really does depend on this technical assistance and relationship and partnership building. So I just, to conclude, welcome anyone who's interested in this area. If you would like to know more, you can reach out to me. My email address is right there, or feel free to ask questions now.
Great, thanks so much, Jeannie. We will transition now to the Q&A portion of the webinar. We've received a number of questions so far, but if anybody attending doesn't have any questions, please submit them in the questions box. I'll start with a pretty broad first question. It was touched on by both of you in your presentation, but what are the main challenges particular to manufactured homes to benefit and develop community solar, and the specific challenges, whether they're resident-owned communities or non-resident-owned communities?
Well, I can offer, and maybe Jeannie can follow up. So the real benefit of community solar is the flexibility. Once you once you create this bill credit product, you can deal with it in many ways. You can deliver it to people in apartment buildings or manufactured homes, whether they're resident owned or not. You can deliver them at different times of the year. And you don't have to worry about structural issues with the home as you would with a rooftop installation. And you know, in New Hampshire, the generators are all near the communities, but they don't really have to be. They can be elsewhere. They can be of any size. You can have a little 50 kilowatt one near the community, or you can have a big megawatt scale one somewhere else. So the flexibility is really the big benefit, I think.
Yeah, and then I guess turning to some of the obstacles or challenges. With a community solar project participating in a group net metering program, you do have ongoing compliance and reporting obligations. Sometimes that can feel quite onerous for a community to do, like filling out Excel spreadsheets, collecting the customer use data. It can be a little bit confusing and time consuming. And I have found that to be a little bit of a stumbling block in some of our communities, which is why the technical assistance and that capacity building is such an important component of these projects. But I will say it's made easier by the ROC structure, where you have a community that knows each other and is regularly talking to each other through board of directors meetings and membership meetings, and they have sort of established communication protocols and access to technical assistance. So that has been key in the success of these projects.
Great, thank you. And Jeannie, you mentioned some of the bill savings aspects to the projects in New Hampshire, but Ben, were you able to find any, what the typical bill was for target manufactured homes communities in Michigan, and potential bill reductions?
Yeah, well, that's another aspect of the flexibility of community solar. You can apportion your bill credits in whatever quantity you want. You can either give deep savings to a few households, or you can give smaller savings to more households. The rule of thumb I tend to use is if you want to provide all or most of the power for a household, you want to give them maybe 5 kilowatts of capacity for your community solar installation. If you want you know, but if you have 100 kilowatts, that means you have 20 households. If you want to give them half as much, then you can do twice as many households. So it's really, it's up to the program design to allocate the benefits. I know the NCSP and Solar for All really encourage bill savings of at least 20%. So that's another, you know, ballpark figure.
Great. Next question. What are the aspects of siting and permitting related to developing these solar projects? Jeannie, I know you mentioned that one of them was donated by a church. One of the parcels of land was donated by a church. But if you could both speak to the siting and permitting aspects.
Yeah, sure. So the permitting aspect is going to be different state by state. I know, for example, in Vermont, where we've also done some projects, permitting is done through the Public Utility Commission, and it's a statewide permitting process. In New Hampshire, the permitting process is done at the local level. And so it's, there's no one size fits all here. We have to do research every time we do a project to see what is and isn't allowed. In terms of siting, so far we've been very fortunate to work with resident-owned communities that have land available in their community or adjacent to their community. But as Ben pointed out before, that's not necessarily crucial. What's important is that the array is in the same service territory as the customers. And so as we start to scale up these projects, and especially with Solar for All, we anticipate doing some projects where we're doing a community solar project offsite and having it shared by multiple ROCs that may not have land available for their own project.
Mm-hmm. There is a movement in some states toward a single state siting authority. I think Michigan is doing that, and maybe half a dozen other states, instead of having each individual county or local government dealing with it.
Great. There are a couple questions related to outreach and engaging potential participants. So what are your most successful ways to start conversations with homeowners? And then a related question is engaging community-based organizations in the area and getting that input.
Yeah, Jeannie, you've probably got a lot more experience on that than I do.
Yeah, I guess this is one of the benefits, again, of the ROC model, the resident-owned community model, in that at ROC New Hampshire, we have an established relationship with those communities, and the communities, within the communities, they have a relationship with each other. It's neighbors who are governing neighbors. And so we typically, when we are initiating one of these projects, so far the interest has come from the community itself. They've reached out to us and said, hey, we really want to look into doing solar. So that's made it a little bit easier, right? But not everyone in the community is necessarily informed about solar at that point when we get someone reach out to us. And so typically we will first go and engage with their board of directors and sort of ascertain their level of interest and being community champions for a project, because it really does take community champions. And then we will attend a membership meeting and provide information sessions on the project. All of our projects are opt-in, and we don't have 100% participation in any of the projects at this time. We have close to it, except for the last one, which we have 15 of the 25 households so far, but I'm expecting that to be fully subscribed by the end of this year. Typically, people have various reasons for opting out of a project. With these projects in particular that are grant funded, some of the compliance, so annual income surveys, is a little bit of a turn off. They just don't want to get involved with that. So it's a lot of information sharing and just checking in. And the cooperative does take a lot of responsibility for going door to door and having their neighbors informed about the project as well.
That the only thing I would add, this reminds me that another product of the National Community Solar Partnership is training from the University of New Hampshire, their Carsey School of Public Policy, has a training class. The class itself, they'll do maybe 20 to 30 people per cohort, which takes a couple months, and that's instructor led. But they also now offer a self-led, self-guided online course, which has most of the same content. I put the link. I just texted the link to Zareen. I don't know if she can share it with everyone, but if you can't see the link, then just Google, the Carsey School, University of New Hampshire. What's it called? The Foundations of Community Solar Development is the name of the online class.
Great, thanks, Ben. We have a couple questions related to billing, and in particular consolidated billing. So are the ROC projects in New Hampshire, do they have consolidated billing for subscribers? And maybe you two could talk about consolidated billing and what are the considerations for different billing paradigms, if there is any consideration at all.
So in New Hampshire, the billing mechanism for these projects is, I think it's pretty manual on the utilities part. So we send to, or the cooperative will send to the utility a list of the households and their customer account numbers that want to participate in the project. And then the utility allocates an on-bill credit to each of those households each month. And that's the only method that we have, other than the other opportunity is for doing basic net metering, group net metering in New Hampshire, so not having on-bill credits, and in that case the utility cuts a check to the host. In this case that would be the cooperative, and then the host would distribute the benefits as a lot rent reduction. And we do that as a lot rent reduction to avoid having it distributed as income. There are some households who might be close to being at the cutoff for certain programs and benefits, and we don't want this to be what makes them fall off the benefits cliff. The downside, though, of doing it that way, with the check being cut to the host, is that you're not eligible for the low moderate income adder in New Hampshire unless you elect on-bill credits. So that's why we're going down the on-bill credit route.
Yeah, so in addition, as part of our technical assistance for the NCSP, we are currently working on a report on consolidated billing. It's a very popular topic. And specifically, we have a request from the New Mexico Utility Commission. So we're talking about all the nitty-gritty nuts and bolts of implementing consolidated billing instead of dual billing, and also some workarounds that we've thought of that in case your utility does not have consolidated billing and doesn't want to do it. But that report should be out, I'm not sure, in the next few weeks, I hope.
Great, thank you. And then a couple questions related to subscriptions and subscription management. So first question, do subscribers pay for their subscription? And then second question is, Jeannie, I think you just mentioned that the utility basically manages the credits. But yeah, are there different, is a community solar subscriber management platform necessary for these projects, or different considerations around managing the bill credits? I will say, before our panelists answer the question, there has been some questions about the Mojave-Ottawa model that Ben mentioned earlier around banking the credits to benefit folks in the winter. I'll plug a CISA webinar that we did a few months ago. We did a webinar with the folks who administer that program at Mojave-Ottawa. It is, I believe it's managed by the local community action agency. Yeah, feel free to check out the CISA website for more information on that model. If you can remember the question that I just asked.
It wasn't about the banking.
You asked about.
Sorry,
about the
subscription
fees, right? That's right. Sorry.
Managing credits, yeah.
Yeah. So our projects don't have a subscription fee. The only cost of entry, so to speak, is that each household does have to provide documentation to comply with the overall grant agreement and group net metering rules. So in the first instance, they need to enter into a group net metering agreement, no payment. They need to provide their utility account information so that they can be enrolled in group net metering. And then they need to complete a income survey each year. That's part of the terms of the grant and being eligible for that low moderate income adder, but there's no subscription payment.
Yeah, across the country, there are all different ways of structuring these deals. The most, I'd say probably the most common is where a third party offers a subscription. The customer signs up for the subscription and then gets a bill credit that is larger than the subscription fee. But there are plenty of, especially low income focused programs that avoid a subscription fee and simply deliver the benefits.
Great, sounds good. Well, I think that concludes all of our questions. I want to definitely thank all of our attendees for attending today, thank our panelists for presenting. Everybody that attended and registered to attend, CISA will send around an email with a recording of the webinar. A recording of the webinar will also be housed on the CISA website.